It's Charter Local Edition. Brad Pomerance here in the San Gabriel Valley, joined by Emily Gabel-Luddy. She is a councilwoman in the beautiful city of Burbank, California. I'd like to speak with you about your city, which no doubt is very popular. Folks want to live there. You're near many studios. You're near Hollywood, downtown. But it's hard to find a home and or an apartment anywhere in Burbank, let alone LA County.
That is a great observation. You're absolutely right. From the children of people who've lived in Burbank all their lives, to our seniors, and recently even our senior board was hearing from seniors saying, oh my gosh, my rent's going up, I can't afford it, I'm on Social Security.
And let's talk about rent, because I was stunned to learn that the vacancy rate in LA County for rentals is just under 3%, which essentially means it's very difficult to find an apartment. And what you have happening simultaneously is housing prices are still going up, which puts pressures on rents. And if people can't buy a house, they need to rent. The cycle just keeps going, and especially in a community like Burbank.
We have a very popular community. People do want to live here, and frankly, we want them to live here. We have some projects coming forward, but I think our council made their #1 priority this year affordable housing.
Can we talk specifically about affordable housing? Because that becomes a slightly different issue. Because when you use the term affordable, we're thinking about lower income housing. That's different from homelessness. That's a whole separate issue. But affordable housing is hard to come by these days. Redevelopment was all essentially eliminated.
It's gone.
It's gone. So how do you work to bring about affordable housing in Burbank?
Well, we're looking at a couple of things. One is, one of the ways we're looking at affordable housing is we're asking ourselves, if you were an entry-level teacher or an entry-level officer, an entry-level librarian, can you afford to live in Burbank? And so we're looking at that kind of entry-level salary to see whether or not we can even meet that test.
Think about this, though. If you're an entry-level teacher, you're making, let's say, $50,000 a year. I don't think you could live in Burbank.
It's not a lot of money. You're probably spending 50% of your income.
But you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to spend 25% of your income.
Or 30.
Or 30.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but you know where I'm going.
No, I know what you mean.
And so what do we do? I mean, you're known for your great school district, but do you want your teachers commuting an hour to get to? Right.
So we have to have that conversation with the council as a whole. We need, in my opinion, and I'll just speak for myself.
Please.
Because as you know, I'm a planning and land use and design expert.
Yes, I do, though. I do.
We do need more housing in our community. We need it in the right place. We need it in an area that's close to our best transportation, which is our downtown Metrolink station. All the regional buses go in there. There's a tremendous amount of transit available. We have bike lanes all through the downtown. So if we're talking about where housing should go, and the need for more housing, it's clearly a downtown location that we should be considering and looking at.
Is there land?
There is land.
Okay.
There is a lot of land. The city, maybe a few years ago, adopted a new planning and zoning ordinance for an area that we call North San Fernando. It's north of our famous mall.
Got it. I know where you are.
Even the mall owners are coming forward with a new proposal for new housing because, as you know, and maybe your listeners know, the biggest IKEA in the United States of America is under construction right now in Burbank, and its old location will be available for some kind of repurposing.
And that old location's huge as it is.
It's pretty big.
And so the question becomes, though, how do you pencil it out in such a way that a developer is willing to go in there, build apartments, let's call it, or condos, or mixed use, and yet it becomes affordable?
Well, we aren't seeing any condominiums, which I think is a little regrettable. We're seeing apartments, which are badly needed. But secondly, I think we have some pretty smart staff, and we need to understand from a real estate finance and development point of view exactly what the costs are going into building these things. We need to have that understanding ourselves so that we can successfully negotiate for a certain percentage of units that are made affordable in the construction of that project.
You don't have any tools like you did in the days of redevelopment.
We do.
Well stated. Correct me. Go.
Okay.
Go.
We have tools. They aren't financial tools. We can't necessarily put money in the deal. Right. Maybe we can. Yeah. We are getting some refund on our redevelopment money.
Oh, right. Yes.
And we'll be building up a small amount over the years. And I hope to convince my colleagues that we can set aside a portion of that money for underwriting the cost of maintaining lower income housing. But we also have tools of, say, plan development and development agreements. So we're in a position as a city and city council to negotiate what makes the most sense without driving a developer away. And since I spent 12 years either as a zoning administrator or in charge of subdivisions for another unnamed city next door, I've had a tremendous amount of exposure to how that can be done.
You know from what you speak.
Absolutely. Done in a reasonable way, done in a way that all parties agree to, and done in a way that benefits the community.
Can you work with your partners at Disney, at Warner Brothers? Would that be appropriate on questions of housing?
Well, it's certainly questions of housing in terms of what they see for their own employees and what their employees are looking for. They are not building housing.
Of course not. No, but I just wonder if there's a way to bring the business community into this conversation.
Well, something that I think would be very good to do is to bring a wider range of business community, renters, landlord, tenants, other businesses into the conversation through something that I did more than a decade ago, and that was we had a task force that looked into just this thing, got everybody looking at it together and looking at it from their different points of view in order to come up with a formula to make it work better going forward.
I want to speak, if I may, about the drought. Because let's face facts, Burbank can get hot, it can get dry, just like the rest of this entire region. Burbank was required to cut its water usage pursuant to prior conservation standards, 24%. That's a high number. How did Burbank do during those days, and how is it doing now?
Under the governor's emergency executive order, we met every reduction we were required to make. And the astonishing thing about it was 1 billion gallons. I can't even imagine what 1 billion gallons looks
And
like.
how did you do that? Because in the end, it's not easy. It's not every community was as successful as Burbank.
Burbank has been very successful, primarily through education of our residential customers. Our utility is so well run, they went to all the big customers and convinced and worked with them to no longer support their cooling towers with drinking water, but use recycled water for their cooling towers. So that saved an enormous amount of gallonage in terms of reducing the cost.
Were you also able to work with your residents through the MWD or otherwise, or your local utility, to create drought-tolerant plants?
I want you to come and see my front yard.
I would love to do that.
I'm just one of many, 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 many residents in Burbank who took advantage of that rebate program. Our utility offered $1 a square foot on top of MET's too.
That's huge.
So you could get eventually $3 a square foot replacement until MET ran out of money because it was so popular.
Of course.
We still offer the $1 a square foot.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, we do. But I think at this point, very recently, we modified our water restriction ordinance, our sustainable water ordinance. We have rewarded our community by restoring an additional day of watering because everybody's done such a great job. So I expect that you'll see the landscapes in the houses popping up and looking a little fresher.
Her name is Emily Gabel-Luddy. She is a councilwoman in the beautiful city of Burbank, California. My name is Brad Pomerance. You're joining us on Charter Local Edition.